Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 4 in Analytics. This chapter covers products and portfolio management. So let's just kind of jump right into it here. So the first metric you need to understand is what we call trial rate, which is just the percentage of people who try the product for the first time in a particular time period. Okay, and so again, how many people tried the product for the first time in a particular time period? Okay, so let's give you a quick example here. You're a cable company. You know that in a certain period you had 150 customers or subscribers for the first time ever. You know, in your particular population that there were 30,000 households. That gives you a trial rate of 150 over 30,000 or 0.5 or 0.5%. So pretty useful, especially for service companies. The population is something you have to basically kind of define yourself. What is the population? Is it a particular city? Is it a zip code? Is it an area code? Is it a combination of zip or area codes? Can be lots of different things. You just have to specify that number and kind of figure out why that's relevant. Okay. All right. And then we have what we call penetration. So penetration is just basically trying to estimate what usage of our product is going to be in the next period. Okay. So basically, we're going to take our first-time triers, and then add to that those who returned from the previous period. Okay, so same cable company, you've got a sports package, over time that your repeat rate is 80%. Okay, so 80% of customers come back the next period, whatever that particular period is. Okay, that 10,000 customers signed up in January, and you expect in February that you're going to have 3,000 new customers, or these are going to be the first time triers, right? So our penetration rate in February is going to be basically the number of customers from last period. So penetration T minus 1, last period, January is 10,000. You multiply that times your known repeat rate of 80%. Okay, and then from that you add that to your anticipated first time triers for this new period. 3,000, add those together, you get 11,000. That's your estimated penetration. So remember, this is an estimate. So you're taking, again, the number of customers you had last period, multiplying that times the expected repeat rate. So those are the customers that are going to continue to be customers in the next period. And to that, you add your estimated first-time triers. Okay, another example. September. Just moving on down the line here, 6 or 7 months. In September you had 20,000 subscribers. Okay, in August, the previous month, you had 18,000 subscribers. And you have that same repeat rate of 80%. The question now is, how many customers were first-time triers in September? Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm giving you different numbers, and you have to kind of work backwards. Okay, so basically what you're going to do then is you're going to solve for the triers. Okay, so it's going to be penetration minus repeat customers, and that equals basically your triers. Okay, so September customers, this is your penetration. This is this number right here. You're expecting this number this period. Last period, you had 18,000. That is your penetration, T minus 1. You've got repeat rate of 80%. And again, you're solving for first-time triers. So you move things around, and you end up with, again, 5,600. So you take the number of this period, you subtract the number last period, and the difference is going to be those who are trying for the very first time, and that's 5,600. Okay. All right. sales projections. So we can now take our penetration number and use that to kind of estimate what is our sales going to be. It's important for employee scheduling and for raw materials purchasing, things like that. Okay, so you've got a record store, you sell records. You know that last period you had 5,000, I'm sorry, you're anticipating this period you're going to have 5,000 customers. Okay, you know from historical data that customers come, purchase from you on an average 3 times a month, and they make an average number of units of 5 purchases per month. I'm sorry, per purchase. So every time they purchase 5 units, they come 3 times a month. Okay, so what is our sales projection? We just multiply those 3 numbers together. Our estimated penetration of 5,000 times the number of times each of those persons buys from us, and multiply that times the number of units they purchase each time they do. That gives us a total sales projection of 75,000 units. So why do we need to project sales? I just kind of mentioned that. It's good for employee scheduling, ordering, replenishment, things like that. Okay, so it just really helps you kind of get going. Figure from the book, just want to take a quick look at it. Okay, so total volume is always going to equal our trial volume, which is the volume purchased by our first-time triers, plus the total volume purchased by those who are repeat customers, meaning they've come back from the previous period. Okay, so you don't really have to memorize or know this entire figure, but just know that this is kind of how it's all calculated. All right, trial rate. Moving on. Okay, trial rate is just basically the number of the percentage of customers that are probably going to make a purchase. Okay, so let me go back to the previous figure a little bit. So one thing you can do to kind of estimate trial volume is to do a survey. So ask people that have visited your website, for example, what are you thinking? What's the likelihood you're going to purchase from us on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being definitely buy and 1 being absolutely not. Okay, you can take the numbers that you get from that survey and kind of estimate, given the responses that were provided, what percentage are actually going to follow through on this particular deal. Okay, and so here's an example. So we're trying to figure out a trial rate. So we send out a survey to a whole bunch of people. Hey, what is the likelihood you're going to buy our product? 20% say definitely will, 50% say probably will, and so on and so on. Okay, we know, or we can know from kind of historical data, what percentage of those who say definitely will buy actually do follow through, because a lot of people will say one thing and do something different. So 20% of your customers you surveyed said they definitely will buy again. That doesn't mean that every single one of those are actually going to follow through. Okay, but basically you've done this survey numerous times and you've discovered that those who say definitely buy, 80% of them actually follow through. You know that of those who say probably will buy, 30% actually follow through. Okay, and the rest, pretty much, they're not going to. Okay, so you can do a survey to kind of get a trial rate. Okay, so basically you're going to take each proportion and you're going to multiply it by the probability of purchase. But you're only going to do this for the definitelys and the probablys. Okay, so remember we said, you know, definitelys, 80% of them actually follow through. Probablys, you know, 30% of them follow through. The rest, they don't follow through at all. So basically, you take each proportion, so 20%, multiply that by 80%. To that, you add 30% likelihood for these guys multiplied by their proportion, 50%, and then for each of these three, you can either just leave them out or plug them in with zeros for probability of purchase. Okay, and so you do those, you add them up, you end up with 0.31 or a trial rate from your customers for this new period, whatever it is, of 31%. Again, percentage response, that is proportion. Probability of purchase is going to be the 80% of all those who say we definitely will buy actually will. So and just multiply those two numbers together for each group, add them all together, and you get your trial rate. Okay, and again, the reason you do that is to adjust for the fact that lots of people who say they're going to do one thing end up not doing it. So this calculation is only possible if you have historical data. So if you've done a survey in the past, you can use that to kind of estimate what it's going to be this time. If you've never done the survey before, then this is not possible. So you might do it once as a baseline, and then next year redo it, and you can kind of look and see what people did and said last year, and then come up with that probability of purchase. Okay? All right. Now we're going to do something called adjusted trial rate. We've just estimated a trial rate based on our survey and our historical information about what people say and what they do. Okay, we can adjust that trial rate for other things. Okay, one thing we can adjust that for is what we call awareness, what percentage of customers actually know the brand, and then also what we call all commodity volume, which has to do with, you know, what percentage of distributors or retailers we can say actually carry the product. Okay, the more retailers that do carry the product, the higher your sales are going to be, and trial rate is going to be, and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's assume the company has awareness of 60% and this all commodity volume of 60%. We're carrying our trial rate forward from the previous example. All you do is multiply these three together. So you end up with an adjusted trial rate of 11.16%, okay? So it's just a series of adjustments. We take responses to the survey, adjust them for what people say versus what they do, and now we're adjusting it for how many people actually know of us or know of the product, and also how many different places actually carry the product. And so we've adjusted this down to a much smaller number, 11.16%. So, you know, when you get 80% at the beginning saying, yeah, we're going to definitely buy your product, or we're probably going to buy your product, don't get too excited, because it's going to be adjusted down with all these other figures. All right, trial population. So we've talked about trial rate, okay? And we've talked about adjusted trial rate, but what we need to do now is convert that adjusted trial rate into number of people, okay? Because at the end of the day, we're not cared about trial rate. We care about how many people are actually going to get the product, okay? So we're going to take our target population. In this particular example, we'll say it's 20 million people, okay? We're going to multiply it by our adjusted trial rate. That's going to give us a trial population of 2.232 million, okay? That's trial population. Okay, now, getting there, we know the number of people who are going to purchase, estimated, okay? The next thing we need to know is, well, how many units are purchased per customer on average, okay? In this particular example, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to say the average number of units per purchase is 1, okay? So we'll take that number and multiply it by our trial population, and we're going to end up with 2.232 million units. Okay, so that's trial volume. So this right here is just a combination of all the things we've just worked on to get from those survey results to an actual trial volume. Okay, so in brackets here is the adjusted trial rate. So we've adjusted the definitelys and the probablys times their likelihood of purchase. Multiply that times the given awareness, the given all commodity volume. Multiply that times the number of units per purchase and the total population, and that gives us this trial volume total figure. So we just kind of, in the previous couple screens, we broke it down kind of one at a time. So there it is, kind of if you want to do it all in one particular fell swoop there. Okay, so it's a useful calculation if you have good data on, you know, how big your population is and historically what do people say and do and how many do they buy each time they actually do buy. So good, just helps with, you know, just helps with demand production estimation. Okay, now that has to do with trial, with people trying products for the first time. Okay, but if you remember back, we go all the way back here, we just determined trial volume, but we also want to determine our repeat volume. You know, what is the number of units sold to people who are not triers, not first-time buyers, people that have come back. So that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to calculate repeat volume. Okay, much more straightforward than the trial volume. Okay, so of those who purchase our products or try our products, we expect that 10% will come back. So it's a pretty low repeat rate. Okay, so we can use that figure to determine the number of repeat buyers. Okay, so our expected repeat rate is 10%. Our trial population we already looked at was 2.232 million people. So that gives us the number of repeat buyers of 223,200. Okay, we know that repeat buyers buy 4 times per purchase, or 4 units per purchase instead of 1 unit per purchase. And this is pretty consistent in the real world, is repeat buyers tend to come back and spend, you know, larger amounts as they go along. So it makes sense. So we can now turn the number of repeat buyers into repeat units or repeat volume. We know we just calculated repeat buyers as 223,200. We know that repeat customers buy twice. 2 units per purchase, and they come back, or they purchase from us 4 times during the time period. We'll call it a year. Okay, so 223,200 repeat buyers. They buy 2 units per transaction, and they buy 4 times. Okay, we can plug all those numbers in to get repeat volume. I apologize, at the beginning I may have said that they buy 4 units per purchase. It's actually 2. Okay, so plug all that in, number of repeat buyers, number of units per transaction, and number of occasions per year in which they purchase. That gives us a repeat volume of almost 1.8 million units. Okay, then from there, all we do to calculate our total estimated volume is we just take that trial volume and add to it our repeat volume, and that gives us a total volume of a little over 4 million units. Okay. All right, switching gears. That's enough about trial volume and total volume and repeat volume. Now we're going to talk about basic, just year-on-year sales growth. So a lot of times public companies will release a report that says, hey, we grew this much percentage over last year, so year-on-year growth. So typically year-on-year growth is going to be specified as, May of 2019 versus May of 2018 or whatever the particular years are. So how much did we grow over a particular time period, okay? So this is the formula. It looks nasty, but it's not. This in the brackets, just in the parentheses, just means you can specify this in terms of dollars, units, or percentage, okay? So this is the value in the current period. This is the value in the previous period. Divide that by the previous period. Easy way to think of this is new minus old divided by old. New minus old divided by old. So quick example, Deli had $380,000 in revenue in year one and $570,000 in revenue in year two. Question is, what is their year-on-year growth? Here's the formula, plug it in, good to go. New minus old divided by old gives us year-on-year growth of 50%. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, this number or this calculation provides a good apples to apples comparison for year-on-year, provided nothing else changed. But if you're, say, a retailer who has a number of locations, what if you added a new location or 2 new locations or 3 new locations? Theoretically, by adding more locations, your sales figures are going to be higher. Okay, just because of nature, there's just more locations. So in that situation, year-on-year growth doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense because it's now an apples to oranges comparison. So what you can do is just do what we call same store growth. Okay, so basically all you're going to do is you're going to take the same year-on-year growth formula, but you're not going to include in this formula any new locations. All you're going to do is include the locations that existed in full during both particular time periods. So here's an example from the book. This is specified in euros instead of dollars. So you've got this company in year one, they opened 4 stores, and in year 2, they opened a 5th store, okay? And here's their revenue in that first year. This store had no revenues in the first year because it wasn't open. This wasn't revenue. This is the total revenue for that particular store in year 2. You can see it did really great. So the question is, what is your year-on-year growth? You need to look at it in terms of same store growth, okay? So if we look at it, just kind of assume apples to apples, we've got year-on-year growth of 84.5%. That's fantastic, right? We grew a lot. Yes, but you can see here that a huge percentage of revenues in year 2 came from the opening of one particular store, okay? But if we subtract that out, we can take just the numbers from the 4 stores that were open both years, determine same store growth to see, well, okay, well, how did the existing stores do? Okay, so if we do that, we'll take 10 plus 19 plus 20 plus 9 was the number of the total revenue in year 1, 58 million euro in same store sales year 2. It's 9 plus 20 plus 15 plus 11, or 55. If we do the same store growth formula using the same formula, you end up with same store growth of -5%. Okay, so even though your year-on-year growth was 84.5, you actually lost sales. Your number went down in the stores that existed in both particular years. So that's not a good thing. Okay, so don't really want to be happy if you get that. So the question is, what happened? And they don't really necessarily know without digging more into it. Okay. So value in future period. Here we're getting into a little bit of finance, compound interest rates, things like that. But if we want to know how much a company's uh, revenues are going to grow over the years, we can kind of use this calculation here. So you've got a company in year 0, they had sales of 100,000. They had a compound annual growth rate of 10%. So typically this company, stores grow 10% a year, something like that. Okay. We're looking 3 years down the road. So if our current year sales is 100,000 and we're going to we want to look 3 years in the future, we know our historical compound annual growth rate is 10%. What is our value in that year 3 period? So here is our formula. Just plug all this in. Current value times 1 plus the compound annual growth rate to the 3rd power. Okay, calculate that out. You get 133,100. Okay, if you had done it linearly, just basically multiplied the 100,000 times the 10% over 3 years, you would have gotten a lower figure. Okay, all right. Oops. We can also, basically solve for any variable we want. So something we can do is, if we know everything but the compound annual growth rate, we can do a little algebra, solve for it, and come up with what that growth rate actually is. So our starting value was 100,000. Say our ending value was 133,000 even over 3 years. This is our formula. So you plug the ending value, beginning value to the 1 over number of years, in this case 3 power, and put all that in brackets. And from that you subtract 1, and that gets you basically the compound annual growth rate of 10% that was given in the previous example. This is just, we were just solving for it, given other numbers to see how it actually works. Okay, so don't get bogged down by the notation of this formula. Ending value is given, starting value is given, number of years is given, and you just plug everything in. Okay, just remember that this is 1 divided by number of years. Okay, and this is an exponent. This caret equals means exponent. So it's ending divided by starting to the 1 over number of years power. Subtract all that from 1 by 1. All right, cannibalization rate. So something that goes on in business that we have to kind of be concerned about is what we call cannibalization rate. So quite simply, what this means is what percentage of products that you sell were sold at the expense of other products you sell. Okay, so a car company has an SUV, a large one, and they decide one year to introduce a small SUV. So the question is what percentage of sales of sales you would have gotten of the existing product were now kind of taken over by people switching from the large SUV to your new small SUV. Okay, so let's go through this. Cannibalization rates. Pretty simple example here. So you've got a company that sells 2 products. Product B, which is brand new, never sold before, and product A. Okay, so product B, you sold 1,000 units. Okay, and you know that the cannibalization rate for product A, again, is the old product, was 40%. So you solve for sales lost. This is what the formula looks like. So you end up with this. Okay, so 1,000 units lost, 40% cannibalization rate. Again, solve for loss, and you get number 400. 400 units sold were the result of cannibalization. Okay. All right, so here's a big example. This is Lois. Okay, Lois sells umbrellas. Okay, so she's got a regular umbrella that she sold for a while, and then she's thinking about selling a new umbrella called the Big Block. This is straight from the book. I'm not sure where they got the name Big Block. Not very creative and doesn't really seem to be that relevant, but here we are. Okay, so the traditional umbrella sells for 20 bucks, variable cost of 10. That gives you a contribution per unit of 10. She sells roughly 100 a month, so 100 sales times unit contribution of 10 gives her a total monthly brand contribution of $1,000. Okay, pretty simple. So she's thinking of coming out with the Big Block. Okay, Big Block sells for 30 bucks, $15 cost, gives her a contribution of $15 per unit. She estimates she'll sell 50 units of this. So 50 times the $15 contribution gives her a total monthly contribution of $750. Okay, so if there was no cannibalization, all you would do is take the two contributions and add them together. So you would end up with total company contribution across the two umbrellas at $1,750. Okay. However, she expects that a lot of the customers who buy the regular umbrella are now going to switch to the Big Block. Therefore, it's going to hurt the number of units sold of the original umbrella. Okay. So what you do to determine the number of original umbrella sales that are lost to cannibalization is you take the sales of the new product, multiply it by the cannibalization rate, and that gives you the number of units lost of the old or the original brand. So 50 sales of the new product, multiply it by your cannibalization rate of 60%, you're going to lose 30 sales of original umbrellas to the Big Block. Okay, so if your estimated demand is 100 for the original umbrella, you've got to subtract out your cannibalization number of 30 units, which means you're going to end up selling 70 total units of the regular umbrella instead of 100. Okay, and so you're going to end up with 70 units times 10 dollars in contribution per unit for the original umbrella, and then the 50 units sold of Big Block times its contribution of $15 per unit. Add those together, you get a total monthly contribution of $1,450. Okay, I guess I should be showing you the calculations here as we go along. And so the numbers are transposed there, apologize for that. But basically your contribution per month is going to be $1,450 instead of $1,750 because of the cannibalization issue. Okay, so the question is, should she add the Big Block? And the answer is still yes, because her total contribution is going to go from $1,000 if she sold just the original brand to $1,450 by selling both, even though there would be some potential sales loss because of the cannibalization issue. Okay, here's another example. Okay, so you got a particular product. This is the estimated sales per year. This is the number of unit sales of a new particular formula. It gives you the cannibalization rates. Unit sales of regular formula with the new product launch is now going to decrease. So the question is, should you launch the new product or not? Okay, so if you don't launch the new product, you've got $10 contribution. I didn't mention that, I'm sorry. The contribution for the regular formula is $10. Okay, so this is the estimated sales if you don't launch the new one. So 1,000, 900, 800, 700, sum those up, 3,400, multiply that times 10, you'll make total contribution of $34,000 if you do not launch the new product. okay? If you do launch the new product, just running through the calculations, you end up with this, okay? And so you will lose a number of sales of the regular formula, and unit contribution of the new product is only $8 per unit instead of 10. You're going to sell 1,800 units of that, 2,100 of this. That'll give you a total contribution after cannibalization of 35,400. So you're going to make an additional amount of money, additional 4.12%. Worth it? You have to kind of decide. It may be a lot of work to make an additional 4%, so it may not be worth it at all. You have to kind of think about that. The other alternative would be, well, let's just end our focus trying to grow the original brand. We make more per unit of that anyway, so there is that to kind of think about. Okay, all right, fair share draw. This is a situation where basically, if we go back to market shares from the beginning of the course, basically the theory behind fair share draw is if you're going to take market share away from your competitors, you're going to do it in a linear fashion, such that you're going to take the most market share away from the competitor with the highest market share, and so on and so on. Okay, so here's an example. These are sales from year 0. Okay, Threadbare has a 50% share. Too Cool for School has 30%. Tommy Hitchhiker has 20%. So those are the only competitors in the marketplace. Okay, so a new firm enters the market and expects $300,000 in sales in the first year. Okay, so they expect that 66.67%, or 2/3 of their sales, will be captured directly from competition. So that's something they have to kind of estimate outside of this example. Okay, so you take your expected sales, multiply it by your expected, market share, stolen from the competitor, so to speak, and that you multiply those together, and you basically get, $200,000 of your sales will be captured from the competitors. Okay, assuming fair share draw. Okay, you're going to capture $100,000 from Threadbare, so it's just basically the captured dollars times their market share. Too Cool for School, you're going to take the same captured dollars and multiply it by their market share. And at Tommy Hitchhiker, you're going to take that same number, multiply it by their market share, and that gives you basically where your captured sales are coming from. And again, captured sales is just sales taken away from the competitor. Instead of organic new sales, totally new customers, they're customers already there that you just kind of taken away, you've captured them. Okay, so again, the theory of fair share draw is you're going to take market share away from your competitors in proportion to their relative market shares already. Okay, so that's fair share draw. Okay, now once this new entrant has entered the market, we now have new sales figures based on what they're going to make and the sales of the other companies. After you've taken sales away from them, we can recalculate market shares. So again, we're entering 300,000 in sales. We capture 200,000 from existing competitors. That means that we're going to create $100,000 in organic sales, again, from totally new customers. Last year, market sales were $1 million. This year, we're growing it by this 100,000, so it's now at 1.1 million. The new market shares, we're going to multiply everyone's new recalculated sales figures, divide it by the new total market sales figure, so we end up with new adjusted market shares. So if you're a brand new competitor and you hit 27% market share in the first year, you're doing something really good. You should ask for a raise for sure. Okay, moving on. Effective market share. Effective market share just basically is your company's market share across products, and you're going to basically it's going to be a function of what percentage of your own sales come from each brand and what their market shares are out in the marketplace. Okay, so effective market share is what it's called. So this is what the formula looks like. It's a little hard to follow here, but I'll just try to walk you through it. So basically, you're going to take in segment A. Segment A is where you have 70% of your sales. Segment B is where you have 30% of your sales. Segment A is where you get 50% of your market share, and segment B is where you get 20% of your market share. So all we're going to do is multiply this times this, and we're going to multiply this times this, and we're just going to add them together. Okay? So it's basically the sum of the brand's market shares in all segments in which it competes, weighted by proportion of sales. Okay, so what is the company's effective market share given those figures? And this is all it is. Segment A revenue share times segment A market share. This is segment B revenue share and segment B market share. Multiply those two together, add them together, you get an effective market share of 41%. Okay? This is important. It's kind of a good metric to have as a standalone metric, but it's also good because we can plug it into what we call a brand equity index. Okay. So brand equity index is basically is a calculation of how strong your brand is in terms of a number of things, and one of them is this effective market share. Okay. So this is what the formula looks like. Brand equity index equals effective market share times relative price times durability. We've already calculated effective market share. These two numbers will be given to you. Okay. Relative price is your price as brand divided by the average price of your competitors. Okay. So actually, technically, relative price is not given to you, but the numbers are given to you to allow you to do a very easy calculation. Durability definitely is given to you. Okay. So our effective market share we just calculated was 41%. Okay. In this case, I am giving you the relative price of 1.25. That's an index. So this just basically means that your price is 25% higher than the competition, okay, or than the average competition. Durability is expressed as a percentage. In this situation, we'll give it to you at 60%. So your brand equity index, all you do is multiply those three figures together, and you end up with 0.31. Okay. Now, I didn't indicate it up here, but the relative price formula is just, like it says there, your brand price divided by the average price of the competitors. So if your brand, for example, was $2.50 and the average competitor's price was $2, you would do 2.5 divided by 2, and that gives you this relative price of 1.25. And remember, or keep in mind that the relative price number is not a price itself. You wouldn't put a dollar sign in front of it. It's just an index number. So if the relative price was 1, then that would mean that your price is exactly the same as the average competitor's price. If it's less than 1, that means you're less expensive. If it's more than 1, that means you're more expensive. Okay, so in this situation, we are more expensive to the tune of 25% more. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, all right, then we have what we call conjoint preference. Okay, so we can do some research up front when we're figuring out how to design products, to figure out what are customers looking for, in terms of a kind of a combination of attributes, and what makes the most sense to us. Okay, so we have these things called part worths. Okay, and it's just kind of the relative utility or value of a particular attribute level. Okay, so in this example we see here, we go out and we ask a bunch of people questions about, hey, we're going to make this new, I don't know, little MP3 player. I know MP3 players are dated now, but it fits this example. So, so if we sold a MP3 player for $100, how valuable is that price to you? They answer on a scale of basically -1 to +1, with 0 being the midpoint. The average score, or the average part worth score, was 0.9. $200, they'd say, well, yeah, it's probably, it's okay. So the average score ends up being a 0.1. $300, well, no, that's way too expensive. Everyone says that's a terrible price. So you get a part worth of -1. Then what you do is you ask them about the same product, questions about, different sizes of the MP3 player. How valuable is a small one? How valuable is a medium one? How valuable is a large one? And those are the part worths you get. Okay. Then what you can do is you can take each combination of these two attributes, or the part worths of these two attributes, and add them together, and the number that has the highest sum ends up being the one that is the most preferred by consumers. Okay. So in this particular situation, we've asked all these questions. So, and again, literally all you do is you take each price level and each size level and add them together, add their part worths together. So small, $100, small is a 0.7, $100 is a 0.9, you add those together, 1.6. Small, $200 is that same 0.7 times 0.1 or plus 0.1, you get 0.8. Small and $300, again, small part worth gives you 0.7. The $300 price gives you a part worth of -1. You add those together, you get -0.3. Then you go through the same process for medium at all three prices, and then large at all three prices. Okay, so, and then again, the highest value ends up being the one that is the most preferred, and probably the one you should try to produce if the numbers make sense. Okay, so in this situation, the one that's most desired is the smallest size at $100. Okay, so yeah, we want it cheap. We also want it super portable, so we can run with it, play sports with it or whatever. Okay, so that's it. So any particular homework question or exam question related to this is, I would literally just give you one of these and ask you to tell me which one is the most desired. Okay. Now, another kind of issue with these is just because one particular combination has the highest total conjoint preference doesn't necessarily mean that's the one you should go with, in terms of designing a new product, because, you can make a small one, but making it small may be expensive, and selling it for $100 is not going to be profitable. So you might say, well, no, that's not going to work. We're going to have to go a different route here. So maybe we go with small and $200, because that's the second highest, tied with this. Okay. What's clear to see here is that nobody wants a large one. That's a super negative part worth score there. So you shouldn't even consider any of the largest. Mediums, as long as it's the cheapest, people are okay with it. The other two, not so good. So, okay, that's all we're going to say for this chapter. There was a lot there. Hopefully it came off clearly. There's a lot to learn, but make sure that you consult the book, because most of these examples came directly from the book. And please do not hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. Again, there's lots of math here, lots of calculations, and I want to make sure that you understand. So please do not hesitate to get in touch if there is some issues. All right, thanks.